Arab community. She is the future of our kids and youth. And hopefully, I will be very optimistic. If God forbid she doesn't make it, still she made great now. She made a stone towards our future, our kids. وهذا فخر لينا ان انتم معنا. ابونا ديفيد ابونا الكبير، مبارك فيكم معنا. ارجو انكم تكونوا وراها لانه هاي بنتكم مش لانها انا فلسطيني وهي مسيحي معكم. اشكركم واشكر الاخ زيد انه كان جاي يزورنا. دائما اخونا الكبير بزيد هو الكبير، هو كبير واحنا شكرا.
يعني بصراحه انت نموذج مشرف للجاليه المصريه او العربيه بمعنى صح اوسع، وبنتمنى لك فعلا ان ربنا يوفقك ويقف معاك ويسندك، وفي نفس الوقت لما تنجحي اكيد عندك تارجت معين عايز توصلي ليه، فربنا ان شاء الله هيقدرك ويدعمك ويسندك انك تقدري تحققي اللي انت بتتمنيه اولا الجاليه العربيه كلها، وربنا يوفقك في عملك في وظيفه كنيو جاب يعني.
خلينا نسمع منها
You don't know my name.
By the way, Rania is my daughter. That's the same name. Rania and Rania. That's why he keeps mixing her up.
دائما شي از هو كل اولاده برنسس وبرنسس، فهي دائما لما تروح مناطق يعني يبغى عرب انجلش بتتكلم في نقطتين. النقطه اللي هو يعني جوزيف earlier asked the question يقول ليه انت رشحتي نفسك؟ ليه انت حابه يعني تنزلي في هذا المخاض اللي هو عسر دائما عليهم، لانه ابوها بيقول لي بتنفش الميت شركه. ف يعني دائما بتتكلم في حاجه اللي هي her personal story، انه مين هي وكيف ولدت وين what did she study and يعني what she's doing right now, and the next one why she was driven to take this task and run for Congress.
Thank you. Okay, so if it's okay, can I speak? It's okay if I speak English?
Makes the English.
Yeah, and let me know if there's okay, great. I wish I could speak in Arabic because I would be very happy to speak in Arabic, but I am not that, I'm not there yet. So inshallah, I'm to try. But just so grateful for you for hosting us in your restaurant. Really, truly, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here. I know that you're both super busy. It's holiday season, so I'm just very grateful for that. And I'm also just really grateful for you for introducing me and bringing me to this.
Yes. بس لسه بدري. الساعة 6 هي.
6 لسه ما صارتش 6.
تعال جدي تعال.
And so yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about my story and who I am. So my name is Rana Abdelhamid. Rana Abdelhamid. And I'm from Queens. I was born and raised in New York, which is a neighborhood. It's a community, working class neighborhood, immigrant community that really raised me and gave me so many of my values. And I started my political career quite early on, actually. And it was within the post 9/11 context of really witnessing the discrimination that my community faced as an Arab American community, and just the way in which Arabs were being represented and depicted. And for me, my entryway into the political space is actually very unconventional. It's not like most people come to politics. It was actually because I was walking down the street one day in Queens and someone attacked me for wearing hijab. So someone tried to take my hijab from off my head. And it was a really vulnerable moment for me, a very difficult moment. But since I was very young, I was doing karate. And so I had a black belt in Shotokan karate. So I started doing...
excuse me, if you see him with marks on his face, you know where it's coming from.
This is why. So I started doing training for girls. That's my work. I was doing training for girls in karate and self-defense. And so
She did that in the Arab American Association.
The Arab American Association.
Yes, he trained our kids.
Yeah, exactly. And organizations across the country, across the globe. The organization grew to reach thousands of people, including in refugee camps, and working with Palestinian and Syrian refugees, including working in Latin America, including working in Europe. So just really engaging with women and girls, survivors of different forms of violence. And that journey also took me to my education. I had the opportunity to go to Middlebury College and study political science. I had the opportunity to go to Harvard University and study public policy at the Kennedy School of Government. And then I came home. And coming home and being back in my community, like many parts of New York City, it's just become more and more unequal and more of a difficult place to survive in. As a young person who's just starting their career, watching families really struggle, and the reality of that is because things have become more and more expensive, right? And we're just talking about housing in New York City. It's one of the most expensive housing markets in the entire country. And so I got involved in Little Egypt, our neighborhood community, where so many of my friends, we were like seeing our small businesses, our favorite businesses. One called Mumbar, which was started by this chef called Chef Mustafa. If you go to him, he'll talk to you about the history of Egyptian food and Egyptian cuisine. And that was actually struggling to pay their rent. And so we started just helping support that small businesses make ends meet. And then through that, learned about more and more of the issues in our community, including the fact that people don't have food to feed their kids, like some of the widowed mothers, or people were dealing with challenges with their immigration, and dealing with challenges with their rent. And so we started a collective, actually, which Wet was involved with, called Little Egypt in New York City. And we started with this organization. I came to this race in the middle of all that work, in the context of the pandemic. Really, as you all know, right, in the pandemic, the severe inequality that so many of our communities were confronted. The work that we were doing, a little bit of, which you all know, the importance of charity and service, right, and spiritual religious people, it escalated overnight, right? The healthcare crisis, you probably saw the images that came out of Queens. People were lining up to get into the hospital. And because we lost 5 hospitals over the last 20 years in Queens, people died because we didn't have hospitals that we needed. And it was during that time that, a lot of the work that we were doing became more and more important. We were more and more involved. And an organization called Justice Democrats, which is an organization that recruited and ran AOC and Dr. Bowman and Cori Bush, who are all representatives now, actually recruited and are running me for Congress. So I'm not running by myself. I didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to go and run for Congress. It was actually an institution that has done this before, that has identified leaders in communities and seen challenges with congressional representatives and actually offered alternatives for communities. Whatever it is, their racial background, they could be New Yorkers and they could have access to quality air that they could breathe and quality health care and equitable education. And that's what this race is about. And so we launched in April, last year, not this year. So it's been almost a year that we've been in this race. It has been more than a year. And it's been a dream. Like, I could never imagine, as someone, you all know, right? Growing up in a post-9/11 New York City where the only story of being an Arab, being an Egyptian was negative on TV, that someone like me could actually run for office. And someone like me could run for office and do so with hundreds of people from various backgrounds, Jewish, Christian, Black, brown, rich, poor, who are part of our movement, and who are so excited and who are making this happen. And we're running without taking a single dollar from corporations. We're running only with grassroots contributions. So we're not taking money from real estate, we're not taking money from corporations, just individuals donating to support us. We're running with a grassroots base. We're running with a political coalition. Like, we're not Rana on her own. We are dozens of political organizations that include organizations like the New York Working Families Party, which is a political party in New York that supports and represents working people. We are running with Churches United for Fair Housing, which is a churches network that supports fair housing in New York City. We're running with the Jewish Vote, which is the Jewish organization that organizes Jewish community around social issues. We're running with New York Progressive Action Network, just to name a few, but it's over a dozen organizations. And what we're fighting for is 3 things, which I think are very, they're basic human rights. I'm not asking for anything that's out of the ordinary. I'm not asking for anything that is too bold, I think, from my perspective. I'm asking for people's right to actually exist in a home without having to be kicked out of their home, without having to be homeless, without having to fear being kicked out of their home. I'm asking for us to live in a society where we're addressing climate change. Because I grew up, Astoria is also nicknamed Asma Alley because we have the most poor air quality in all of New York City. That's how toxic our air is to breathe. I'm asking, the third thing that we're asking for is safety, right? We want so that nobody has to walk down the street and there's a police officer at this table, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. We want so nobody has to walk down the street and has to feel unsafe, right? Can feel protected. Because we all have the right to wear whatever we want, right? We all have the right to look however we want and feel safe on the subway and feel safe on the street. So that's what we're going to fight for when we get to Congress, inshallah, those three things. And yeah, the last thing that I'll say is that we have 2 months left. So just June 28th is where we're going. So much of our energy right now is on talking to voters. That's the most important thing. We have one of the biggest districts, one of the most unequal, one of the most diverse. We're the only district in New York City to span 3 boroughs. So we're Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. So it's massive. And so 99% of our time is spent communicating with voters. We have to make sure voters are excited about us. And we are, just
We're all Egyptian. We're all Arab.